Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Erica. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make these mini knit beanie ornaments. So last year I did a ton of different crochet ornaments. I had beanies, stockings, mittens. A lot of people asked for knit versions of those, so that's what we're doing this year. I have already released the little stocking video. Today's video is going to be for the beanie ornament. These are really fast and easy. They are beginner friendly, so if you're new to knitting, they should be pretty easy. They are just small, so they're a little bit fiddly, but there's nothing complicated in them. Let's go ahead and start today's tutorial, and I'll show you how to make these adorable little beanie ornaments to add a homemade touch to your holiday decor. All right, so to make these cute little hats, you just need a little bit of yarn. I'm actually going to be working with scraps. Each little hat only takes about 2.5 grams of yarn. So these are perfect for working through your stash and just using up all those little scraps. I'm going to be using this yarn today. This is called Sheepjee's Stone Washed, and this is a sport weight yarn. You can use any yarn you like. Just follow the directions on the back of the yarn band for what size knitting needles to use. And then also be aware that if you use something thinner or heavier, your ornament size will change. These little hats with the pom end up at about 2 inches tall. And then without the pom, they're only about 1.5 inches or so. So the supplies that I'm using, of course, are the yarn I just talked about. I'm going to be using 3.5 millimeter knitting needles. These are Knitter's Pride Dreams, and they are wooden, which I like because with these small projects, I feel like it's really easy for the stitches to just slip off if you're using metal needles. And you could also do this using Magic Circle or however you like to do round projects. You'll need some scissors, a yarn needle, and then for the pom-pom, we're just going to be using a standard dinner fork. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So for today's video, I'm going to be just doing a solid hat like this one. I'm not going to be doing the stripe, but you can just adjust this pattern and do however you want. You could do each round a different color. I mean, you can just have fun with it. But just to keep things simple, we're going to do a white for the brim, we're going to do a green for the hat, and then we'll do a white pom. So we're going to start off with our first color, and that's the white. And we are going to cast on 14 stitches. So to cast on, I do like to use a long tail cast on, but you can use any cast on you like. To do a long tail cast on, we just need to leave a longer tail. And how to figure out how long of a tail to leave is I just go ahead and do 14 wraps around my needle. 13, 14. And then that's about how long I need my tail. So we'll just start it somewhere in here. It's not a precise measurement. And then we're going to make a loop with that. I'm going to pull my tail through that loop, put my hook on there, and then you just pull your tail to tighten. And I like my tail to be away from me and my working yarn to be towards my body. We're going to take our first finger and our thumb, and we're just going to place it between those two and just pick them up like this so we have this V. And then I take the tails and just hold them with my finger down here just to give them a little bit of tension. Okay, so again, just put your fingers through there and then just give them tension with your pinky finger. All right, to do our first cast on, we're just going to go under this first strand that's closest to us, over the one that's on our pointer finger, and then with my thumb, I just pull that loop over the needle, drop it, and then just pull to tighten. And we're going to do that a little bit closer up so you can see. Again, I just put my fingers through these two strands and just hang on to them. I go under the one closest to me, over the one on my first finger, and then with my thumb I just bring that loop over the end of my hook. All right, so that's 3, 4, 5. And if you need a tutorial on how to do this cast on, I actually have a specific video detailing how to do the long tail cast on. We do it a lot slower, and it's just maybe a little bit easier to follow if you're brand new to knitting. So you could check that video out if you need more help casting on. You could also do any cast on that you like. The other thing I'd like to point out here is try not to make your cast on too tight. I might even run out of yarn here. I might have to do it again. Okay, and so I have this little tail here, and that's about a good length of a tail for me, so I'm good with that. If it's not, you can just undo this, make your strand a little bit longer, and start over. So we now have 14 stitches on. So now that we have this, we're going to take all these stitches and I'm going to slide them down here to the end of a needle. I'm going to grab my second needle, and I'm just going to, in the same direction they are on this needle, I'm just going to transfer 7 of them onto this needle. So I'm just sticking my hook or my needle in there and just picking them up. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so see, they're all still going the same way. And then now I'm just going to fold those needles in half being careful not to twist them or anything like that. And you can tell when you open it up if that knitted edge just looks like it's, you know, nice and straight. So now we've got them together, and now we can flip them over so that our yarn is hanging out of the bottom, and we can just push those down to this working end of our needles. And the first round we're going to do is just a knit round, and so we're basically going to be joining these two together. See how they're not joined yet? We're going to join those two together in a circle for our hat. So we're going to take, just for this first round, make sure that your yarn is coming in between your needles. If you pull your yarn this way, you'll actually create an extra stitch on your needle. So you don't want to do that. You just want to make sure that it's coming out from in between your needles. Once we do this first round of knitting, it will automatically be coming out of there and you won't have to do that again. So we're just going to knit the first round, and a knit is just, you're going to go into that stitch and out the back. We're going to make sure our yarn is in between the needles, wrap around and pull that stitch through, and then pull the one off your left needle. And just be careful, this first round is a little bit touchy. And then I'm just going to go ahead and tighten that up just a little bit so that we don't have a big gap there. All right, and then we're just going to continue on knitting in each stitch. And again, if you need help with the knit stitch, please go and see my How to Knit series. I have a knit stitch, a purl stitch, a cast on, a bind off. I have how to fix your stitches. So I have a whole series here on how to knit. So if you need help knitting, definitely check that out. But we're just doing one round of knitting. And once we're done with that, we're going to just turn our needles. And that was our first needle. So now we're going to knit across the second needle as well. So again, we're just going to yarn over and knit all of these stitches. And sorry, I said yarn over. I'm thinking we're going to yarn over the needle. But a yarn over is a different stitch, so don't get confused. Sorry. We're just going to knit across all 14 stitches. And now we have our hat joined. And you can see here's our beginning of round, but now you can see those are joined. So that's the first round of knit stitches. The second round, we're going to purl all the way around all 14 stitches. So we're going to purl across all these stitches. And to purl, you need to bring your yarn in front, still in between both needles. And I just hold it there with my thumb for this first stitch. It's a little bit easier. And we're going to insert our needle into the front of the stitch and across. When you're purling, your needles are going to be going in opposite directions. When you're knitting, you're coming in from the front and out the back, and your needles are going the same direction. That's how I remember. So purl is in from the front, knit is out the back. Okay, so we're going to go into the front. We're going to take our yarn, wrap it around that needle, pull it through, and then slide that stitch off the left needle. And for this first stitch, I do sort of tighten it up, and then now we're going to purl again. So again, we're sticking our needle in from the front, wrapping our yarn around, pulling it off. And we're just going to do that all the way around. So purl all the way around. So the first round is knit around, second round is purl. Again, I'm going to center my work on that back needle so hopefully it doesn't slip off, and we're just working with the front needle. And again, we're going to purl, and since we're at this first stitch here, I do like to insert my needle. I'll kind of hold all of this mess with one hand. Make sure this is tight. Do that first purl and just kind of tighten that yarn so that it doesn't get too loose right there. And then you'll want to tighten that second stitch as well. Okay. All right, so first round, second round. We've got a round of knits and we've got a round of purls. We're going to turn our work again, and each time I turn our work, I just center my stitches on this back needle so they don't fall off. And you can weave in this little tail after we get the brim done if you want, just to get it out of your way. A lot of times I'll do that just because that way it's just less yarn to worry about. All right, so this one we're just going to knit all the way around. Turn our work. Again, I sort of center those stitches on that back needle, and we're going to knit across the second one. And again, I always tighten that first stitch a little bit. I just pull it a little bit tighter so I don't have a gap where these two needles are meeting. And again, just continue knitting. All right, so there's our first three rounds actually. We did a knit round, a purl round, a knit round. We're going to do another purl round. So again, I want to bring my yarn to the front, and I just hold it with my thumb there, and then we're going to purl this stitch and purl all the way across. All right, so there's our first one. Just hold it tight. Second one, again, I'll kind of tighten that and then keep going. Okay, so that was our second round of pearls, and we're going to do one more round of knit, and then we're going to change to our new color. Okay, so here's our brim. Now the other option you could do instead of doing that pearl brim if you want is you can do a ribbed brim, and all that is, I just did 8 rounds of knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, and then when I was done knitting the green, I just flip it up and you have a cute little brim. So either one is fine. I think they're both cute, so you can choose what you prefer. All right, so now we can cut off our accent color or our brim color, whatever you want to call it. And I just leave, you know, just a little bit of a tail there. And look, I still have enough of my yarn ball I can use for another project. And now we're going to join our green and do the hat. Now, before I join the green, because this yarn is in my way, I'm actually just going to tuck it down under here. And that way I can pull on it a little bit easier to tighten it as well. And then when I'm done, I can just quickly weave those ends in. And for this first stitch, I'm going to take my needle and just knit that stitch, but since we're adding a new color, I just take the green with a little bit of a tail, loop it over my needle, and just pull it through. I'm actually going to weave my tail in as I go because these are so small and it's just easy to get this out of the way. So to weave it in as you go, you're just going to wrap that yarn over your needle. You're going to wrap your working yarn over to knit, and then you take this yarn off the needle and it just catches it in your working yarn. And then we're just going to go ahead and pull that stitch through and knit it. For the next one, you just knit it regular, and hopefully you can see there, but that green tail is still caught in my yarn. So when I go to knit it, I'm catching it. The next needle, I'm going to do the same thing where I yarn over my tail. My tail's in my left hand. My working yarn is in my right hand. I'm going to go to knit, take my tail off, pull my stitch through, pull it off, and then for the next stitch, you can see now my tail in my left hand here is just caught underneath my knit stitch. And we're just going to do that. I actually just do it for this first round across, and then I drop that tail, and that'll keep it woven in enough. I'm going to go ahead and take this tail and just shove it down through my hat, down to the bottom with all the other tails so it's out of my way. Okay, so it'll look like this. We've got our new color added, and we can just continue knitting around in the green color until we have all of our rounds done. And this is where you can do something different if you want. You can do a couple rounds of green, a couple rounds of white, and you can just keep, you know, changing it up. You could do a different color for each round and have a cute little striped beanie. I think that would be really cute as well. If you are going to do something where you started with the white and you're just doing 2 rounds of green and then continuing with the white, I would not cut off your tail when you end the white and start the green. I would just carry the tail up at the side and just keep going with it so that you don't have to start a new piece of yarn every time you switch colors. But that's just me. I just like to carry it up the side if I do that. But for this one, we're done and we're just doing all green. So I'm going to go ahead and just keep knitting my green until I have all my rounds done, and then I will meet you back here. All right, so now I have all of my 8 rounds of green done. So now that we have 8, what we can do is just take our yarn, and I like to leave a tail. We're going to weave in and cinch up the top of our hat, but we're also going to use this as our hanger. So I'll leave about, I don't know, 10 inches or so of a tail just so that I have room to work with. Next, we're going to take our yarn needle, and I'm just going to thread my tail onto that, and then just carefully, so my yarn is coming off this back hook, back needle, we're going to work across the front needle and just pick those stitches right off. I'm just going to slide them off just the way that they are. So just slide them right off onto your needle, and I'll usually do the first needle, pull that tight like that, and then I can take that needle out and set it aside, and then we're going to turn it around and do the same thing and just pick all those stitches off onto our tapestry needle. And then now we can just pull our yarn and just cinch our top of our beanie up, and I just like to pull it nice and tight. And then now here I'm going to actually go back through some of those stitches, and just to give it a little bit of extra security at the top there, and just pull it even a little bit tighter Once I'm happy with that, I'm actually going to take my yarn and I'm going to go across the top of my hat like this and just out the other side so that we have this loop. And then I'm going to decide however long I want this loop to be. And then I'll just take my tail and tie it around my loop with just a little knot. And I actually do 2 here because it'll just keep pulling. But I just tie it like a knot like that. I'll do it one more time. I'm just tying it in a knot just to secure it like that. And then I can take this tail and I'm just going to stick that through to the inside of my hat, pull it out the back side, and then we can just weave it in a little bit. But it's already tied in a knot, but I do still like to weave it in a little. All right, so all my tails that need woven in are hanging down from the inside of my hat, and then I've got my little hanger on top. And then now the next thing to do is to create our pom-pom. And this part is the fun part. So I'm just going to take one of my little leftover balls. This one is 1.7 grams and we'll probably still have some left. And you can make these poms any size you like. This is sort of the size I'm going for on mine. But you can, the amount of times you wrap it around is the amount of, is like how fluffy it's going to be. So I'm just going to take my yarn and just lay it on my fork. And I just leave a tail sticking out so I can hang on to it. And then we're going to wrap this yarn around our fork about 40 to 45 times. Okay, so that's 45 times. That's about what it looks like. And you can make these bigger or smaller, or sometimes I'll just use my leftover yarn and like however much I have, I'll just go till I run out, and that's how big that pom is. That's how precise these are. Okay, so then I'm just going to cut off, and then I'm going to take, I'm just still hanging on to it here, but I'm going to take a piece of yarn, and this is probably, I don't know, 8 or so inches, and you can use your needle if you need to. I'm just going to thread my yarn through this middle tine and pull it out the back side. And then I'm laying my fork down here so I can have access to my hands. And so you can hopefully see my yarn is coming up those middle tines right there. And then we're going to just take that and we're going to tie it in the tightest knot we possibly can. And I like to do what I call, we used to do this with our kids' hockey skates. So instead of just looping your yarn through one time and pulling it, I actually loop it through twice. That actually helps it stay a little bit better so that when you have to let go, see how I let go, it's still kind of holding its shape and it's still giving me tension on my pom. You want to pull this nice and tight, but you don't want to break your yarn. All right, so now we have that tension on there. I can go ahead and tie another knot to secure it. Okay, now we're going to hang on to these tails. We don't want to cut these tails off. We're going to use these tails to tie it to the top of our hat. So we're going to hang on to those tails, and then with your scissors, you're just going to go through, and this section that was looped around your fork, you're just going to cut those little loops off. And you're going to do that all the way around. Just try to make sure you don't cut off your tails. Worst case, if you do, you can tie another yarn on there and okay, and then we're just going to shake it out, and this looks a little bit crazy, so I'm just going to give it a little bit of a haircut. I'm not great at cutting these. You'll do a better job than me probably. And then the other thing you can do is just roll it in your hand, shake it out. All right, the last thing to do is grab our yarn needle, and I'm just going to thread one of the strands through on one side of the top of my hat. And I'm going the opposite direction, so you can see my hanger went from here to here. My pom is going to go from here to here. And I'll just pull that one through and then carefully pull the other one through the other side of my hat. That way it's centered. And there's our pom. Now I'm going to just flip my little beanie inside out. Also kind of help stretch the brim out a little bit from that cast on edge being tight. Here's our tail from our poms. So I actually just tie that in a knot underneath here just to secure it. I'll do it twice just for extra measure. Nobody's gonna be wearing this. You can actually weave those ends in if you want, or just trim them off. Nobody's gonna see that. And then we just need to weave in the rest of our ends, and we're all done with our beanie ornament. So to be perfectly honest with you guys, I'm not all that careful about weaving in the ends. I just zigzag a couple times and then cut it off. I just try and make sure that none of my ends are poking out of the bottom of the beanie where you would see them. All right, so here's all of our finished little hats. As you can see, I made a few different kinds. I did a little striped version. I thought this was really cute. I have just the one stripe version, and then we have the different cuffs as well. All right, guys, that's it. As you can see, these beanies are adorable. They're super fast to make. You can sit down in the evening, put on a good movie, grab a cup of hot cocoa, and just have fun stitching up a variety of styles of these little beanies. Now, of course, I did mine in the yarn I showed in today's video, but you can do them in any yarn you like. But I do encourage you to dig into your leftover stash and just use up all those little bits and bobs of yarn you have. Don't forget to join our Sew With Me group on Facebook. You can add any of your progress pics there, whether it's knit or crochet or sewing, quilting, any of the pics there from any of my YouTube videos that you're making or any of my patterns as well. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. You can hit the like button on this video and that notification bell so you don't miss out on any upcoming fun. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you're having a wonderful holiday season, and I'll see you in the next video. But I encourage you to dig into your stash and just use up all those little leftover scraps of fabric that... I keep saying hook because I'm a crocheter. When you're knitting, I keep grabbing underneath here if you're wondering what I'm trying to fix. My needle wants to go there. You don't want to do that. You just want to grab the stitch. Okay, and then the last thing to do is just grab our yarn needle, which, where'd it go? Here it is.
Oh wow, very majestic. Oh my
god. You're really good at them.
Get its good side. Oh wait, just kidding, they're all good. For what?
Huh?
For what?
For fun.